Shalom, shalom, everyone. Today we're here to take a look at part 4 in what I lovingly call the bride line. It's the Hebrew root line which contains the word bride. We can find it on page 146 in the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon. Today we'll be actually starting on 148. The first 3 parts covered the first part of the root line. I would highly suggest you go back and watch those, as we see exactly the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, the hows, just some of them that relate to being the bride of Messiah. Starting with our core verse that we've been working from, Revelation 19, verses 6 through 8. And I heard as the voice of a great crowd, as the sound of many waters, and as the sound of mighty thunders, saying, Hallelujah! For Yahweh El Shaddai reigns. Let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise. For the marriage supper of the Lamb has come, and his wife has prepared herself. And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright. For the fine linen is the righteousness of the set-apart ones. So here again we see the one that is preparing herself to walk into the marriage chambers of Yahweh El Shaddai. So let's take a look at just some of the things that the Hebrew words in the bride line reveal to us. Today we're starting at 1242 HV, which is on page 148 in the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon. It's in the left-hand column, about halfway down. We see at the V, it's the Kaf, the hand, the lamb, the shepherd's staff, and the Hey, the little man with his arms raised. It's complete, to bring something to its completion. At the H, we see the action is to complete. At the 1242 two-letter root, the Kaf Lam, the action is complete, the concrete is vessel, and the abstract is whole. The pictograph Kaf is a picture of a bent palm representing the bending or subduing of the will. The Lam is a picture of a shepherd's staff or yoke. Combined, these mean tame for the yoke. An animal or land that is tamed has been worked and is complete and ready for use. Taming includes construction of holding pens, putting the soil to the plow, which we discovered was the soil of our hearts, harvesting of crops, milk or meat. One eats once the harvest is complete. One has a marriage supper of the Lamb once the harvest is complete. So we see our Strong's number at the HV line is H3615. It's kala. In the Strong's it says a primitive root, to end, whether intransitively, to cease, be finished, perished, or transitively, to complete, prepare, or consume. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first 2 appearances of this Hebrew word in our scriptures. The first one is at Genesis 2:1, and the second one at Genesis 2:2. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their array. And in the 7th day Elohim completed his work which he had done. And he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the 7th day, and set it apart, because on it he rested from all his work, which Elohim in creating had made. Now this may be commonplace to so many of us to know that we are to keep the Sabbath day, to set it apart and keep it holy. I want to cover it anyway, just for those that might be newer to their walk in Torah, because it's so important that we get these foundational principles of keeping Torah down in our walk, not just for the sake of doing the Torah, but for the sake of having the desire and understanding the depth why Yahweh has put these things together for us. So in Exodus 20, verses 8 to 11, we see, Remember the Sabbath day to keep it set apart. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahweh thy Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And while I don't have it on the slide, we know this 7th day, this 7, comes from the concrete of to make an oath. And Yahweh brought everything into that oath on the 7th day when he rested. It is so important for us to complete all our work in those 6 days. Remember this Sabbath day. Remember that Yahweh, Elohim, put all these things together, called heaven and earth as a witness. Keep this day set apart and Kodesh unto him. It's all about sevening oneself. Now, in the Brit, in the book of Acts, the disciples, the taught ones, kept the Sabbath 85 times. And that's something you can Google on the internet. We're not going to cover the verses here. But you can see them doing the exact same thing. The Sabbath day and us resting and us having our work done and remembering what Yahweh has done are of the utmost importance. To come into the land of Israel and certainly to be part of his bride. So we're just going to take a little snippet of a look at kind of what this means on a deeper level. We're going to go to Isaiah 58, verses 13 and 14. And while there are other things in Isaiah that are connected to all this, we're going to specifically hone in on the Sabbath day. If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my set-apart day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the set-apart of Yahweh honorable, and shalt honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words. Then thou shalt delight thyself in Yahweh, and I will call thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of Yahweh has spoken it. So we see we need to have this desire to keep from doing our own pleasure, speaking our own words on the Sabbath day, because it's all about sevening ourselves to him. So taking a look at keeping ourselves from doing our own pleasure. Strong's H2656. In the ancient Hebrew lexicon, we see it at 2191N, and at the N we see delight. At the 2191, we see from right to left the het, which is the wall, the pei, which is the mouth, and the zod, which is the little man on his side. The action is delight. And we see it comes from the 2-letter parent root, het, pei, as in hiding a treasure. So if we go back and look at that 2-letter parent root that it came from, it's an ancient Hebrew lexicon 1178. The action is cover, the concrete is a cover, and the abstract is innocent. The pictograph het is a picture of a wall. The pei is a mouth, meaning open. Combined, these mean wall opened. The tent is opened to allow one into its covering for protection. Anyone entering a tent will be protected at all costs by the owner. Praise Yah. A secret is something that is covered and hidden. A haven as a place covered over for protection. So we see we keep our foot from doing our own delight, our own pleasure. We are storing up treasures in the Shemayim when we do these things out of a desire to please Yahweh as opposed to pleasing ourselves, whether it be out of pleasure or necessity. We want the tent door to be opened to us, that we would come in under his covering for protection, because it says we will be protected by the owner at all costs. It's no different from Shabbat to Shabbat as it's going to be when we come in the millennial reign. Looking at verse 14, we read, Then shalt thou delight thyself in Yahweh, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of Yahweh hath spoken it. So we see keeping the Sabbath is one of those things that will cause us to ride upon the high places of the earth. So what does that look like? Well, ride is Strong's H7392. The Ancient Hebrew Lexicon is 2769V. It's ride, to ride an animal, a wagon, or a chariot. It actually comes from the resh het, which means to traveling, which is where we get our word ruach, our spirit, from. And these high places are at 1036 HN, just a high place. We see the concrete is high, and back at the root, two-letter, we have the beit mem, anything that is tall or high. So I went and looked up this high places in the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, and we see it at number 253, a ridge or height, high place, Bama, technical name for a cultic platform. A cognate is found in Akkadian and Ugaritic, Bama, which in 80 of the 100 times refers to a worship area, or perhaps structure. Has the basic meaning of back, ridge, or height. In Ugaritic it means back of a person or animal. Where Bama refers to a worship area, in the ASV and RSV, they use high place. The idiom of treading on the heights conveys the notion of possessing key terrain and thus signifies being in firm control. To tread Bama is a promise given to Israel. Deuteronomy 33:29, Isaiah 58:14. It is also descriptive of El in Micah 1:3. So here we see that they will be caused to ride upon the high places, to travel a path that will cause them to be in control, firm control of key terrain. So we see that Israel, those who will follow and sojourn with and are Israel, are promised the land. The priesthood was promised the inheritance of Yahweh. That didn't mean they didn't have a place in the land. That mean that they didn't get fed with the fruits of the land, but their inheritance was Yahweh. And all of Israel will be in the land in the end one day. But prior to that, in that day, when Yeshua returns, you can be for sure and for certain that there will be firm control over that land, and there will be no more cultic high places, and they will all be turned to dust. In that day of the first resurrection, the truth will go forward into the land. It will ride upon the high places, and those who are going to be in that first resurrection will be following right behind the truth, because they were following the truth all along. It is of the utmost importance for those of us looking to make the first resurrection to be sevening ourselves to Yahweh, that we can ride upon the high places, that we can break these things down in our own lives right now and have no part with them. Then shalt thou delight thyself in Yahweh, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of Yahweh has spoken it. He's going to feed us. Through sustenance, one becomes whole and satisfied. We gain strength from being tame for the yoke. People are fed with sustenance that causes them to be whole and satisfied. The heritage of Jacob thy father is an inheritance. It's the noon, the het, the lamb, and the hay. He's going to feed us with the seed that puts us on the right side of the fence to be tamed for the yoke of the shepherd, to be there at his revelation and have all these things here and now and then and there revealed to us. There will be those who will be in control of the key terrain underneath Yah, who came to rescue us during the millennial reign, and there will be those that will be coming in to the land to be fed by those that are in control of the key terrain. Turning to Isaiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. The word that Yeshayahu, the son of Amoz, saw concerning Yehuda and Jerusalem. And it shall be in the latter days that the mountain of the house of Yahweh is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. There'll be a firm control of some key terrain. And many people shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, the house of the Elohim of Jacob, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And he shall judge between the nations, and shall reprove many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither teach battle any more. O house of Jacob, come and let us walk in the light of Yahweh. And so, as we've seen in just this small piece of information on the Sabbath, it is of the utmost importance for us to be sevening ourselves. So just as Yahweh on the seventh day completed Kaf, Lam, Hay, brought everything into the oath, everything was completed, everything was tamed for the yoke, and it was sitting in the revelation, right there in the revelation of him. So since the fall, now we need to be completing our work, coming to a place of rest and sevening ourselves to Yahweh. Every Sabbath, we need to be complete, tamed for the yoke, so that when he is revealed, we can be there with him, know him, and be like him at that time. Hallelujah. So let's take a look at another way the same Hebrew word is used in connection with the bride line. Exodus 32, verses 1 through 14. And when the people saw that Moshe was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, Arise, make us mighty ones who go before us. For this Moshe, the man who brought us up out of the land of Mitzrayim, we do not even know what has become of him. And Aaron said to them, Take off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me. Everybody let's participate in giving up that which is precious to another mighty one. And all the people took off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them to Aaron. And he took from their hand, and he formed it with an engraving tool, and made a molded calf. And they said, This is your mighty one, O Yisrael, that brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. How quickly they forgot, and how quickly we ourselves continually forget today. And Aaron saw, and built a slaughter place before it. And Aaron called out and said, Tomorrow is a festival to Yahweh. Absolutely not. Not a festival to Yahweh, not a festival with another mighty one. Absolutely not. Verse 6. And they rose early on the next day, and offered ascending offerings, and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up to play. We're going to take a closer look at that. And Yahweh said to Moshe, Go get down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim have corrupted themselves. Most certainly. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded calf, and have bowed themselves to it, and slaughtered to it, and said, This is your mighty one, O Yisrael, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. And Yahweh said to Moshe, I have seen this people, and see, it is a stiff-necked people. And now let me alone, that my wrath might burn against them, and I consume, there's our word, I consume them, and I make of you a great nation. Because Moshe was in the order of the King of Righteousness. He was a priest in the order of the King of Righteousness. And since they didn't want to obey what was written on the marriage ketubah and commit adultery at the foot of a mount with the golden calf, he was going to consume, kala them, and make a great nation of Moshe. But Moshe pleaded with Yahweh his Elohim and said, Yahweh, why does your wrath burn against your people whom you have brought out of the land of Mitzrayim with great power and with a strong hand? Why should the Mitzrites speak and say, for evil he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to consume them from the face of the earth? One day that's going to happen. Turn from the heat of your wrath and relent from this evil to your people. Remember Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yisrael, your servants, to whom you swore by yourself and said to them, I increase your seed like the stars of the heavens, and all this land that I have spoken of I give to your seed, and they shall inherit forever. And Yahweh relented from the evil which he said he would do to his people. So not only did they give their gold earrings from the entirety of their families in order for Aaron to mold this golden calf for them, called it the mighty one that brought them out of Mitzrayim, we see in verse 6, and they rose up early on the next day and offered ascending offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play right at the foot of the mount in front of Yahweh. Let's take a look at what this verse has underneath of it, the depth of it actually in the Hebrew. We see they rose up early. It comes from the shoulder. To rise or go early in the sense of placing a load on the shoulders. To depart. They rose up early. They placed a load on their shoulders that was something other than Yahweh Elohim, and it was a departure from Yahweh Elohim. And they rose up early on the morrow, and they offered burnt offerings. Now, we see here in the 1828 Webster's on the bottom left of the screen an offering, a noun, that which is presented in divine service. An animal or a portion of bread or corn, or of gold and silver or other valuable articles presented to El as an atonement for sin, or as a return of thanks for his favors, or for other religious purpose, a sacrifice, an oblation, and then it continues to talk about some other things there. So we know that Aaron called this a festival to Yahweh, and the people said, this is our mighty one that brought us out of Mitzrayim. And so we have this offering that they're presenting as a divine service, according to Aaron, unto Yahweh. Not so. So this offering and the burnt offering, the offering comes from 1357 HV in the ancient Hebrew lexicon. To come, go, or bring oneself or something up. To uncover, as a lifting off of the cover. It comes from the H family root. The action is to lift. The lifting of the yoke onto the shoulder. One taken into exile is placed in the yoke for transport, and the yoke of bondage. For sure this was going to be bondage. It was a common practice to strip the clothes off those who were taken into exile. And at the two-letter parent root, we see the ayin, which is the eye, and the lam, which is the shepherd's staff. The action is to work the concrete as yoke. The pictograph ayin is a picture of the eye representing knowledge and experience. The lam is a picture of a shepherd's staff, or yoke. Combined, these mean experience the staff. The yoke, a staff, is lifted over the shoulder, is attached to the oxen for performing the work. So we see they brought themselves up to experience the staff. They were going to experience the staff in such a way that it would not allow them to come into the marriage covenant. The knowledge and the intimacy, the ayin that they were coming into, was not that of the shepherd. So we see that they were going to experience the staff of the revelation of now they were not going to be in the actual marriage covenant. So they rose themselves up to offer these burnt offerings unto Yahweh. And he didn't ask for that. He doesn't want that. It is not something that's going to get us into the marriage. In fact, it's going to keep us out. And eventually, by the point of the second resurrection, if we haven't let go of all these things, we will be the ones, people will be the ones being consumed by the heat of Yahweh's wrath, as we read that he wanted to do before Moshe pleaded with him. And they brought peace offerings. These peace offerings show that they were it's a state of being whole and complete or full, an offering of restitution or payment. They were making this peace offering that didn't even belong to Yahweh. There was nothing complete or full or whole. It comes from made whole or complete by adding or subtracting. They were adding or subtracting, that's for sure, but they weren't adding the things to their life that they should have been, and they weren't subtracting the things. They should have never let this stuff be added into what they were doing in the first place. For me, the most amazing part was what I read next in the verse, and what that looks like in the Hebrew. So after they rose up early and they offered their burnt offerings and they brought peace offerings, the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. Sitting down in the Hebrew is a primitive root to sit down, as a judge, in ambush, in quiet, by implication to dwell, to remain, causatively to settle, to marry. Comes in the ancient Hebrew lexicon from 1462 LV. The V is to sit, to set oneself down in a dwelling place for the night or for a long period of time, to settle or remain. They were certainly settling themselves into something. They were certainly joining themselves to something. A place of dwelling as the place returned to. The action is turn, the concrete is seat, the shin is the two front teeth pressing, the bait is a picture of a tent. Combine these mean press to the tent. A place of dwelling as a place returned to. A turning back or away from someone or something. A captive is one turned away from a place of dwelling. Okay, so they definitely turned back and away from Yahweh, their Elohim, after they'd said, oh, all these things we're going to do. And what would we have done? We don't know that we wouldn't have been any more guilty. And we still are today. What are we doing today? What am I doing today? We really need to take a deep introspective look at where we've sat ourselves down and where we're dwelling and what we've yoked ourselves to. A captive is one turned away from a place of dwelling. They were supposed to dwell with Yahweh in a marriage covenant and sat down with someone else, something else, other mighty ones, to dwell and, if you will, be joined and married to the other mighty one. They sat down to eat. 1242 CV, it's actually in the bride line. We've already looked at it. Through sustenance, one becomes whole and satisfied. So instead of looking to eat what Yahweh Elohim was going to feed them at the mount and up and coming in the land, they chose to eat the food, the sustenance, what they felt would make them whole and complete in a spiritual sense, per se. Not that they didn't eat real food, because they sure did. They had a meal, for crying out loud. And to drink. To drink is at 1482 HV is to drink. The H line, the action is to feast. A time of seating together and drinking. The action is sit, the concrete is buttocks. A coming together and sitting to drink. So they sat down to have a meal, to eat and drink, to join themselves to another mighty one. something that Yahweh had never ordained for them to do. And what did they do next? They rose up to play. If we look at this rising up, we see that it's a kum. It's something that we're actually supposed to be for the resurrection. That is the word for resurrection. That is, Yeshua Messiah was raised. That is, we're going to be raised in the first resurrection. They rose up. They rose themselves up. They kum. To raise or rise up, also in the sense of continuing or establishing something. So not only did they sit down, yoke themselves to eat and drink, have a meal, then they established that by rising up. It comes from the concrete of a stalk. We're actually supposed to be these stalks with full heads on them. And they rose themselves up to establish what they had just set themselves in doing. And they rose up and they played. Played is H7611. A primitive root to laugh outright, in merriment or scorn, by implication to sport. In the ancient Hebrew lexicon, we see that it's laugh. At the root line, we see the action is laugh, the concrete is laugh. A laughing in play or mockery. So in the 1828 Webster's, I went and looked at this word merriment that we saw in the Strong's. Mirth, gaiety with laughter or noise. Noisy sports, hilarity, frolic. So we also see that it said merriment or scorn, to scorn, extreme contempt, that disdain which springs from a person's opinion of the meanness of an object, and a consciousness or belief of his own superiority or worth. A subject of extreme contempt, disdain, or derision, that which is treated with contempt, to laugh, to scorn, to deride, to make a mock of, to ridicule as contemptible, to slight, to disregard, or neglect. Absolutely, for sure and for certain, when they rose up to play, it was a disdain in the face of Yahweh. They were contemptible in front of Yahweh. It was a mocking, a derision in the face of Yahweh. They were establishing this. And then I went and looked at hilarity, as we see in the definition of merriment. Mirth, merriment, gaiety, hilarity differs from joy. Isn't that interesting? The latter, excited by good news or prosperity, is an affection of the mind. The former, by social pleasure, drinking, etc., which rouse the animal spirits. So joy, the joy of Yahweh that comes down from inside of us, is excited by good news, our prosperity, success in Yahweh. But this was by social pleasure, drinking, etc., which roused the animal spirits inside of them. Mockery is the act of deriding and exposing to contempt by mimicking the words or actions of another. This is our mighty one which brought us out of Mitzrayim. At number 3 down there, we say vain imitation or effort, that which deceives, disappoints, or frustrates. And I'm sure, as it was then, and it will be in the future, there will be disappointment and frustration, at a minimum. Imitation, counterfeit appearance, or false show. So while Aaron said it was a feast unto Yahweh, this was a counterfeit. This was a false show. This was all an imitation. In Yahweh's eyes, it may have seemed real to them. It may have seemed like the right thing to do. There is a way that seems right to man, but in the end it leads to death. But in Yahweh's eyes, this was counterfeit, false, and it leads to nothing but disappointment and frustration. And so Yahweh was going to consume them. However, in verse 13, we see Moshe speaking to Yahweh. Remember Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yisrael, your servants, to whom you swore by yourself and said to them, I increase your seed like the stars of the heavens, and all this land that I have spoken of I give to your seed, and they shall inherit it forever. To inherit, a mode of descent, to occupy, to bequeath. We see it in the ancient Hebrew lexicon simply as inherit, in the same root line that we saw inherit previously. In the Webster's, to possess, to enjoy, to take as a possession, by gift or divine appropriation, as to inherit everlasting life. I mean, the 1828 Webster's. To inherit the promises. Again, the 1828 Webster's. So here at this point we see Yahweh wanting to consume, kala, everybody, because they had broken that which was on the marriage ketubah, and he wants to start over with Moshe. Moshe knew the marriage covenant was off the table at this point, but that Israel was to inherit the land. We now have that opportunity under Yahweh, who came to rescue us, to go into the land in the first resurrection, to be his inheritance and still be in the land, and those of Israel missing the first resurrection will still have the opportunity at the second one to go into the land. While the inheritance of the priesthood is Yahweh, that does not negate that they will be in the land. And since we know that Moshe was in the priesthood of the King of Righteousness, it is apparent what priesthood the king is looking to have be one with him. And so, the time is now. Hebrews 8, verses 6 to 12. But now he has obtained a more excellent service, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was constituted on better promises. These are no longer bulls and goats. For if that first, if the one before, if those people that were being called into that priesthood had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second. For finding fault with them, the people, not Yahweh, he says, See, the days are coming, says Yahweh, when I shall conclude with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah a renewed covenant, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in a day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Mitzrayim, because they did not continue in my covenant. They were supposed to go into the land, but first he brought them to the mountain for the marriage covenant. They didn't do it. The problem was with the people. And I disregarded them, says Yahweh, because this is the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh, giving my laws in their mind, and I shall write them on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall by no means teach each one his neighbor, and each one his brother, saying, Know Yahweh, because they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, because I shall forgive their unrighteousness, and their sins, and their lawlessness I shall no longer remember. So, are we acting as though, and are we speaking as though, his laws are written on our heart, his laws are in our mind, that we shall one day be his people, the priesthood going into the first resurrection, and if not, those after the priesthood that come in the second resurrection that will then have to do the same things? But are we going to be those people? The time is now. The time is now for the bride to cleanse herself. If there's no priesthood, there's no cleansing. We have to be cleansed to return to the mountain of Yahweh, to be there in the first resurrection, to be pulled from that priesthood as the bride. What are we sitting down eating and drinking with? Is it something that's mocking Yahweh Elohim? Is it something that's arousing, quote unquote, animal spirits within us, as opposed to the joy of Yahweh, who is our strength? Let us be fully aware. Let us ask and pray for discernment that we are doing all things pleasurable to Him and not of ourselves. Hallelujah. This time the consuming will be eternal, and it will be to everlasting death. So as we saw in those definitions of inheritance, is it to everlasting life and everlasting promises, or everlasting death that we have our hearts set towards? Zechariah 8, verses 1 through 8. And the word of Yahweh of hosts came, saying, Thus said Yahweh of hosts, I shall be jealous for Zion with a great jealousy, and with great wrath I shall be jealous for her, going to cover her like a mother bird covers her chicks. Thus said Yahweh, I shall return to Zion, and I shall dwell in the midst of Yerushalayim. That is definitely in the land. And Yerushalayim shall be called City of Truth, because he is the truth, and the mountain of Yahweh of hosts, the set-apart mountain. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, Again, old men and old women shall dwell in the streets of Yerushalayim, each one with his staff in his hand because of great age. And in the streets of the city shall be filled with boys and girls playing in the streets. And thus said Yahweh of hosts, If it is marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of the people in these days, should it also be marvelous in my eyes, declares Yahweh of hosts? Thus said Yahweh of hosts, See, I am saving my people from the land of the sunrise and from the land of the sunset, as far as the east is from the west. And I shall bring them back, and they shall dwell in the midst of Yerushalayim, and they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim, in truth, because he is the truth, and in righteousness, because he is righteous. And so there would be those whose inheritance is Yahweh, who are going to go in when he cleanses the land at the first resurrection. And then there are those that will come after. It will all be done in truth, and it will all be done in righteousness. But the time is now. The time is now for us. Revelation 19:6-8. And I heard the voice of a great crowd, as the sound of many waters, and as the sound of mighty thunders, saying, Hallelujah, for El Shaddai reigns. Let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise, for the marriage supper of the Lamb is come, and his wife has prepared herself. Right now, through to the first resurrection, cleansing the land, going out to the nations, all the way through the millennial reign, and then the marriage supper of the Lamb. Are we prepared? Are we preparing ourselves? Am I prepared? And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright, for the fine linen is the righteousness of the set-apart ones. So the word we looked at was consume. Kaf, lam, he. We are either going to get rid of all the quote-unquote golden calves, other mighty ones in our life, by following what has been written on our hearts, what has been put into our minds because it has been written on our heart, lest we be consumed in the end. Kaf is the hand, bending of the will. The lam is the shepherd's staff. It's the shepherd, it's the goad, it's a teaching, it's a yoke. The hay, little man with his hands raised, revelation. So to be consumed means that that which is being consumed has bent their will to the yoke, to be under the yoke, as we saw, and they were offering these ascending offerings. They were experiencing a whole nother yoke. So they've bent their will, joined themselves, yoked themselves with some other type of revelation, and they even said, This is our mighty one, the one that brought us out of Mitzrayim. Aaron even said, A festival unto Yahweh. It can be very deceptive. We can be thinking we're doing something for Yahweh, and it can look really good, but we need to ascertain on the inside of the cup and dish if it is. Now let's tie what we just talked about to another instance where the same Hebrew word is used in a little bit different context. Deuteronomy 31 verses 6 through 11. Starting at verse 6, this is Moshe speaking to Yisrael. Be strong, grab hold of and seize all that Yahweh is telling you to do, and courageous, be mentally determined, because what's in your heart will cause you to be mentally determined in one direction or another. Do not fear nor be afraid of them, for it is Yahweh your Elohim who is going with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. And Moshe called Yehoshua and said to him before the eyes of all Yisrael, Be strong and courageous, for you are going with this people to the land which Yahweh has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you are to let them inherit it. And it is Yahweh who is going before you. He himself is with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. Do not fear nor be discouraged. And Moshe wrote this Torah and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who bore the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, and to all the elders of Yisrael. And Moshe commanded them, saying, At the end of 7 years, at the appointed time, the year of release, at the festival of Sukkot, when all Yisrael comes to appear before Yahweh your Elohim in the place which he chooses, read this Torah before all Yisrael in their hearing. It's not going away. It's not going anywhere. The instructions that we were given in the writings of Moshe will stand. Going to verse 23. And he commanded Yehoshua son of Nun and said, Be strong and courageous, for you are to bring the children of Yisrael into the land of which I swore to them, and I myself am with you. And it came to be, when Moshe had completed writing the words of this Torah in a book until their completion, that Moshe commanded the Levites who bore the ark of the covenant, saying, Take this book of the Torah, and you shall place it beside the ark of the covenant of Yahweh your Elohim, and it shall be there as a witness. For I myself know that your rebellion and your stiff neck, see, while I am still alive with you today, you have been rebellious against Yahweh. Then how much more after my death? Assemble unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, so that I speak these words in the hearing, and call the heavens and the earth to witness. For I know that after my death you shall do very corruptly and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you. And evil shall come to you in the latter days, because you do what is evil in the eyes of Yahweh, to provoke him through the work of your hands. So we see here that the completed, what Moshe had written, the words of the instructions in this book were completed, Kala. And that this book would be placed beside the ark of the covenant where the marriage ketubah was contained. And that book was there as a witness. A witness to what? A witness to show us, among us, to be with us, to show us how to get back to what was in the ark of Yahweh. So let's get a really good Hebraic look at this one. Take Eltah, this book, Sefer, of the Torah, and you shall place, sum, it beside the ark of the covenant of Yahweh your Elohim, and it shall exist there as a witness. Odd. So looking at the first word take is H3947. 2319V in the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon, learning, in the sense of being received. The action is take, the concrete is tong. It comes from the lam kuf, which is a gathering. So we're going to take El Ta. The El Ta, everything from the El to the Ta, was in this Sefer of the Torah that was placed beside the ark. Anything that had to do with the El Ta and getting back into the ark was placed in this Sefer. It was the instructions to get us back to the gathering and put us on the right side of the fence, the Lam Kuf Het. There we see our El Ta. El Ta. It's a plow point. We're being driven towards the mark. The mark of what? The mark of Yahweh himself. The mark of becoming one with him. The mark of becoming the bride. The mark of getting back into the covenant, the marriage covenant. Take El Ta, this Sefer of the Torah, and you shall place Strong's H7760, 1335 JV in the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon, sum. It's a place to set anything in place, and the concrete is to store. Place it beside. Beside is H6654. It's a side or concerning, on the side of something. The concrete is side, the abstract is stronghold. The Zod is a picture of the little guy on his side. One lies down to sleep, hide, or ambush. And we see that it's going to be there in the ark, bottom right hand side. It's a box, any box shaped thing. A gathering of items or livestock to place in a box or a pen. Boxes are used to store items and keep them in order. Light is also necessary for order. What is in this box is in order, and it's for the order. It's for those in the order of the King of Righteousness. Those in the Melchizedek order who will be taken into the priestly order to be kings and priests to become his bride. So this completed writing is beside the ark. Just a little more confirmation in the words in this verse before we move on to the letters. On the left-hand side we see Strong's 1285, Ancient Hebrew Lexicon 1043 HN4. This is the Ark of the Covenant. A covenant is instituted through sacrifice of choice fatted animals, which is cut into two, and the parties of the covenant pass through the pieces. If one party fails to meet the agreements of the covenant, then the other may do the same to them. Praise Yah that he came to rescue us, and we even have the opportunity to come back into the marriage covenant. Looking at the two-letter family root, the Beit Resh, the action is feed, the concrete is grain. This Beit Resh is the family of heads. We need to grow up into complete stalks of grains. We need to be complete, whole, mature heads for the first resurrection, to be considered, to be part of the priesthood, to be eligible to be the bride and be part of that marriage covenant. So we see that this covenant of Yahweh Elohim, it exists there as a witness. To exist, to have breath. That which exists has breath. In Hebrew thought, the breath is the character of someone or something. Just as a man has character, so do objects. It exists there. We can see the characteristics of Yahweh brought forth in this completed writing of Moshe, in everything from the El to the Ta. It exists there as a witness, and this witness is an ayin dalit there at the bottom. It's to see the door, a repetition of time, either definite or indefinite. This is going to happen again. There's going to be an opportunity at the marriage covenant for those that now come in under Messiah and choose to follow the Torah, the Torot, as it's been laid out beside the Ark of the Covenant. The ayin is a picture of the eye, the dalit is a picture of a door. Combined, these means see the door. As coming to a tent of meeting and entering in. So it's not just a seeing the door, it's a striving entering into the door. A place, time, or event that is repeated again and again. Hence, this time is just going to be repeated again. There's going to be an opportunity for us to be part of that marriage ketubah. Say yes to the marriage ketubah. Be part of the marriage covenant. Now, next, let's take a look at how these letters line up in the ancient Hebrew and if it really paints that picture. From right to left, we're going to read, starting at the top row. Each time you see a capitalized word down here, it goes with a letter. So, this completed writing that's beside the ark, why is it there? So we can be goaded, lamb, to the gathering, kuf, of that day and time, to be on the right side of the wall, het, by everything from the L to the ta, that is contained in the Sefer, Torah, as it will turn, sum, you to be secured, wa, in your cleansing, mem, answering all who, what, where, when, why, and how, mem, that keeps you on the trail, zod, to the door, dal, to L, as it was from the beginning, resh, secured, wa, in the perfect order of the seed, noon, be clothed in light, as the family bait of heads, resh, who will be brought back into the marriage covenant, have responded to the works, yod, and proper worship, yod, of Yahweh Elohim, following these instructions, so we are complete, ta, in Yahweh Elohim, because they are revelation, he, to us, of his outstretched arm, yod, beckoning us to be one with him when he is revealed, he, so we know ayin him, and know ayin, the way to strive to enter the door, dal, that we see, bringing us back into the marriage covenant that is contained in the ark. It is so very clear that the instructions that were written down by Moshe are still intact today, save the change from the Levitical to the Melchizedek priesthood, and the sacrifices they did are not present at this time. Save that, everything else in that book, everything else in the Sefer leads us back into that marriage covenant. Praise Yah. Let us be found with these things written on our heart, placed into our minds, and following them in all things that we do, so we are eligible. Seems like we just keep circling back around to this. Revelation 19, verses 6 through 8. And I heard, as the voice of a great crowd, as the sound of many waters, and as the sound of mighty thunder, saying, Hallelujah, for Yahweh El Shaddai reigns. Let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife has prepared herself. Big assumption is going to be that she is following the instructions that were written, that are sitting on the side of the ark, to come back in through the door to the marriage covenant. And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright, for the fine linen is the righteousnesses of the set apart ones. Turning to Revelation 20, verses 11 through 15. And I saw a great white throne, and him who was sitting on it, from whose face the earth and the heavens have fled away, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, the second resurrection, small and great, standing before the throne, and books, the law and the prophets, were opened, and another book was opened, which is life. And the dead were judged from what was written in the books, according to their works. In order to know to do the works of Yah, we need to know what the books, the Sefer, is telling us to do. And the sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and Sheol gave up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one according to their works. And death and Sheol were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And if anyone was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. Our works need to be based on the works that Yahweh has been telling us to work. It's going to show us approved or not approved, adulterated or not adulterated, so that on that day we are either the bride, there for the wedding, or in the lake of fire. The time to make the choice is now. So I just want to point out one more thing on this topic. Turning to 2 Timothy 3, verses 8 through 17. And as Johann and Mamre opposed Moshe, so do these also oppose truth. Right here, we see Moshe connected to the truth. Men of corrupt minds, found worthless concerning the belief. They are in opposition of the word that came through Moshe. They're still here today. But they shall not go on further, for their folly shall be obvious to all, as also that of those men became. But you, he's speaking to Timothy, did closely follow my teaching. And what was he teaching? The Torah and the prophets, the way of life, the purpose, the belief, the patience, the love, the endurance, the persecutions, the sufferings which came to me at Antioch, at Iconium, and at Lystra, which persecutions I bore, yet out of them all the Master delivered me. So he followed not only his teaching of Moshe and the prophets in the way of life, but the purpose behind them, the belief, the steadfastness, the patience, the love, and the endurance. And indeed, all those wishing to live reverently in Messiah Yeshua shall be persecuted. Isn't that the truth? But evil men and impostors shall go on to the worse, leading astray, causing those to miss the mark so they're not there at the time to know Yahweh Elohim when he comes in his revelation. So they're leading astray and being led astray. But you stay in what you have learned and trusted, having known from whom you have learned, and that from a babe you have known the set-apart scriptures, the Torah and the prophets, which are able to make you wise for deliverance through belief in Messiah Yeshua. All scripture is breathed out by Elohim and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for setting straight, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of Elohim might be fitted, equipped for every good work. So all scripture is breathed out by Yahweh Elohim. It will make a man fitted and equipped for every good work. And we just saw that we would be judged by those works at the great white throne judgment. Let us be found doing the works now, so that the second death has no power over us. Praise Yah. Moving on to the next word in the root line is 1242 JV. There at the V, from right to left, we see the Kaf, the Wa, and the Lam. Sustain, to provide what is needed to make someone or something whole or complete. At the J, we see the action is to sustain and the concrete is food. Again, at the 1242 two-letter parent root, the action is to complete, the concrete is vessel, the abstract is whole. The Kaf is the bent palm, representing bending or subduing of the will. The Lam is the shepherd's staff or yoke. Combined, these mean tame for the yoke. In Strong's, we see the Hebrew number as H3557, cool, a primitive root, properly to keep in, hence to measure, figuratively to maintain, in various senses. Now I'm going to read what the 1828 Webster's Dictionary says about sustain. And as I read these, I just found it so intriguing to think about all the scriptures that come to mind and our behaviors towards being the bride. Number 1, to bear, to uphold, to support. As a foundation sustains the superstructure, pillars sustain an edifice. A beast sustains a load. To support, to keep from sinking in despondence. The hope of a better life sustains the afflicted amidst all their sorrows. To maintain, to keep alive, to support, to subsist, as provisions to sustain a family or an army. To support in any condition by aid, to assist, or to relieve. Let's take a look at this word in Jeremiah 2, verse 13. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns, that can hold no water. Looking at forsaken, we see that it is Strong's 5800, and in the ancient Hebrew lexicon, it is an adopted root at 2532v. Knowing that these adopted roots are sometimes questionable, yet that's what we have in the moment. We'll go ahead and use what we have until further information comes forth. At the V, we see it's the ayin, the zion, and the bait. It's to leave, to go away from, or to neglect. At the family root, it is action is to leave. It says it comes from the zion bait, leaving one's family when purchased as a bride. Looking at the word hewed them out, we see that it is Strong's 2672, a primitive root, to cut or carve, wood, stone, or other material, by implication to hew, split, square, quarry, or engrave. In the ancient Hebrew lexicon, it's 2194v, again another adopted root. We see it's to hew, and at the root line the action is to hew, the cutting or hewing of wood or stone. So we see here that we've forsaken the fountain of living water and hewed out, carved, engraved something else that cannot hold water. That would be these cisterns. And we see them in the ancient Hebrew lexicon at 1250. It's actually DG. It's a pit, a dugout hole. We also see that it comes from, well, we don't see it here, but in the Strong's it comes from 874, which is the V, deep, to make a deep engraving in a tablet or stone, also to give a deep explanation. And right below that at the 875, which is the DN, Strong's 875, we see pit, a dugout hole, usually a well, or a cistern. So we see that it can be a deep engraving in a tablet or a stone, like the tablets of our heart, where we see the law of Yahweh Elohim written, to give a deep explanation. So these cisterns that have been dug out, that are broken, that hold, they sustain no water, are something that we've engraved for ourselves on our hearts by our own hand, securing ourselves to the strength of another head, of our own head, as opposed to that which was from the beginning, the fountain of living water. And I did find it interesting that we see this word fountain in the same root, a spring that comes out of a hole in the ground. So again, we see these cisterns. We can choose to dig out with our own hands, our own cisterns, or we can choose to drink from the fountain of living water. John 4, verses 4 through 15. And he had to pass through Shomeron, speaking of Yeshua. So he came to a city of Shomeron, called Shechem, near the piece of land Jacob gave to his son Joseph. And Jacob's fountain was there. So Yeshua, being wearied from the journey, was sitting thus at the fountain. It was about the 6th hour. A woman of Shomeron came down to draw water. Yeshua said to her, "Give me to drink." For his taught ones had gone off into the city to buy food. The woman of Shomeron therefore said to him, "How is it that you, being a Yehudai, ask a drink from me, a woman of Shomeron? For Yehudim do not associate with Shomeronium." Yeshua answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of Elohim, and who it is who says to you, 'Give me to drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Master, you have no vessel, and the well is deep. From where then do you have this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well, and drank from it himself, and his sons, and his cattle?" Yeshua answered and said to her, "Everyone drinking of this water shall thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water I shall give him shall certainly never thirst. And the water that I give him shall become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life." And the woman said to him, Master, give me this water, so that I do not thirst, nor come here to draw. So we want to be going to the fountain of living water, that it might spring up in us, up into everlasting life, and not be digging out our own cisterns, our own wells that hold no water in our lives. And so Isaiah 10:20 to 27. And that day it shall be that the remnant of Israel, and those who have escaped of the house of Jacob, never again lean upon him who struck them, and shall lean upon Yahweh, the set apart one of Israel, in truth. A remnant shall return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty El. For though your people, Israel, be as the sand of the sea, yet a remnant of them shall return, a decisive end, overflowing with righteousness. For the Master Yahweh of hosts is making a complete end, as decided in the midst of all the earth. Therefore thus said the Master Yahweh of hosts, My people who dwell in Zion, be not afraid of Ashur, who struck you with the rod and lifts up his staff against you in the way of Mitzrayim. Why? You're supposed to be overflowing with righteousness from drinking the living water. For yet a little while, and the displeasure shall be completed, and my displeasure shall be to their destruction. And Yahweh of hosts stirs up a lash for him as the smiting of Midian at the rock of Oreb. And his rod was on the sea, so he shall lift it up in the way of Mitzrayim. And in that day it shall be that his burden is removed from your shoulder, and his yoke from your neck. And the yoke shall be destroyed in the face of the oil, is how that reads in Hebrew. So here we see those that are returning, a remnant, a decisive remnant. We saw this in one of the other parts of this series, this decisive end. When there is a decisive end, there will be those that are overflowing with righteousness. 2832v in the ancient Hebrew lexicon, to flush, to flow over with copious amounts of water. At the Strong's it was 7857, to gush, by implication to inundate, cleanse, by analogy to gallop or conquer. So we see that this adopted root, again we run into another adopted root. We have a shin, a tet, and a pei. They are consumed with what's contained in the word of Yahweh, what was breathed from the very beginning, because they are consumed with what will put them in the basket, which is the word of Yahweh, because they are drinking the living water, that it might gush forth and spring up from them into everlasting life. Yahweh, the fountain of living water. Yahweh's rescue, the fountain of living water. The river of living water, the living water. John 7:37 to 39. And on the last great day, the great day of the festival, Yeshua stood and cried out, saying, If anyone thirsts, let him come to me, and let him who believes in me drink. As the scripture said, out of his innermost shall flow rivers of living water. The same thing that should be flowing from us, because we're drinking from the living water. And this he said concerning the Spirit, which those believing in him were about to receive. For the set-apart Spirit was not yet given, because Yeshua was not yet esteemed. Revelation 21:1 through 8. And I saw a renewed heaven and a renewed earth. For the former heaven and the former earth had passed away, and the sea is no more. And I, Yochanan, saw the set-apart city, renewed Yerushalayim, coming down out of the heaven from Elohim, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the heavens saying, See, the booth of Elohim is with men, and he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Elohim himself shall be with them, and be their Elohim. And Elohim shall wipe away every tear from their eye. And there shall be no more death, nor mourning, nor crying, and there shall be no more pain, for the former have passed away. And he who was sitting on the throne said, See, I make all matters new. And he said to me, Write, for these words are true and trustworthy. And he said to me, It is done. I am the El and the Ta, the El to the Ta, the beginning and the end, the beginning to the end. The one who thirsts, I shall give the fountain of the waters of life without payment. He is the water of life. The one who overcomes shall inherit all this, and I shall be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. But as for the cowardly, and untrustworthy, and abominable, and murderers, and those who whore, and drug sorcerers, and idolaters, and all the false, their part is in the lake which burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. And what do the Spirit and the bride say? They say, Come. I, Yeshua, have sent my messenger to witness to you these in the assemblies. I am the root and the offspring of Dawid, the bright morning star. And the Spirit and the bride say, Come. And he who hears, let him say, Come. And he who thirsts, Come. And he who desires it, take the water of life without paying. Come, drink the water of life. Drink from the living water. For I witness to everyone hearing the words of the prophecy of the book. If anyone adds to them, Elohim shall add to him the plagues that are written in the book. If anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, Elohim shall take away his part from the book of life and out of the set-apart city which are written in this book. Somebody was digging for themselves broken cisterns that came to naught. First of all, they forsook the living water. Come, drink of the living water. And let us quit hewing out for ourselves broken cisterns that don't hold a thing. He that bears witness of these says, Yes, I am coming speedily. Amen. Yes, come, Master Yeshua. The favor of our Master Yeshua Messiah be with the set-apart ones. Amen. So just as a refresher, we're still going to be looking at our word, sustain, cool, kaf, wa, lam, to provide what is needed to make someone or something whole or complete. Now we just looked at it that with broken cisterns, do not sustain, cannot hold water, which is one of the two evils that his people have committed. So next we're going to look at this same word in another context. Turning to Jeremiah 20, verse 9, we read, Whenever I said, Let me not mention him, nor speak in his name again, it was in my heart like a burning fire shut up in my bones, and I became weary of holding it back, and was helpless. We see in the King James, Then I said, I will not make mention of him, nor speak any more in his name, but existence in my heart as a burning fire shut up in my bones, and I was weary with forbearing, with sustaining. I could not stay. And in the Septuagint, I found it very interesting that we read, And I said, In no way shall I name the name of Yahweh, and in no way shall I speak yet in his name. And it became as fire, a burning, blazing in my bones. And I am weakened from all sides, and I am not able to bear it up. I just found it interesting that we don't see that it was in his heart in the Septuagint. We only see that it was in his bones. So looking at Strong's H1197, which is this burning, a primitive root to kindle, that is consume, by fire or by eating. Also, as a denominative from H1198, to become brutish. And so again, we see it in the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon at 2028v, to burn. The action is burn, the concrete is fire, a burning with fire or rage. So we saw that it said consume in the Strong's. In looking in the Webster's 1828 dictionary, seeing consume, to destroy, by separating the parts of a thing by decomposition, as by fire, or eating, devouring, or annihilating the form of a substance. Fire consumes wood, coal, stubble. Animals consume flesh and vegetables. To destroy by dissipating or by use, to expend, to waste, to squander. So we see this fire was burning in his bones. It had to be left out. He had to be let out. He couldn't sustain it. He couldn't forbear it in his bones because it was burning in there. So, what about them bones? They support. The first basic function for the skeletal system and its bones is support. Bones serve as a framework to which the other organs and tissues of the body are attached. The framework of your skeleton provides the strength for your body. To uphold and support your body, your bones have to be strong. There's a fire burning in the support system of his body. When we try to keep those things inside, just like Jeremiah did, there's a fire burning in them. Protection. Bones act as an armor and protection. Our armor is covered with a layer of skin and muscle. The bones of the cranium protect the soft tissues of the brain, the control center for the body. And we see these other places where it protects. The fire is burning in that which protects your body. Movement. Yes, muscles do help us move, but they need a solid structure to work against. The ends of skeletal muscles are attached to the bones. Bones act as levers, controlling the power of the muscles and allowing specific parts of the body to move. This fire is burning in his bones, and it should be burning in our bones if we're trying to keep the word of Yah inside of us for any reason. It will affect our movement. It will affect what protects us. It will affect our support system. Formation of blood cells. Blood cells are formed from special cells in the bone marrow. The life is in the blood. The DNA cells are in the blood cells as well as other cells. In the blood cells, where the life is in the blood. Blood cells are formed from special cells in the bone marrow, the soft center of many bones. It's burning inside that which gives him life. Life is in the blood. It's burning in that which makes the cells that give life to the rest of the body. It cannot be shut up. And then we see some other things on this list about the bones as well. But those are just a few that I want to cover so that we can understand that this fire that is burning should be burning inside of our bones if we try to shut up the word of Yah or keep his name from people. This fire that's burning will affect these very areas of our lives. So this burning that's in our bones, that was in Jeremiah's bones, to bring forth the word of Yah, to bring forth who he is. This fire is a primitive word. It can be literal or it can be figurative. It's in the ancient Hebrew lexicon at 1021 AN, a fire. At the A, the pressing of wood together with the fire drill to produce fire through friction. Huh. Can you imagine trying to hold it in when you can't hold it in? You need to let it out, and it's all about life and support and protection. And can you imagine the friction? Maybe we know the friction that this brings in our lives by trying to withhold what should be brought forth. At the two-letter parent root, it's the L and the shin. The action is to press, the concrete is fire, and the abstract is despair. The pictograph L represents strength. The shin is a picture of teeth and imply pressing, as one does with the teeth to chew food. Combined, these pictures mean a strong pressing down. A fire is made by firmly pressing a wooden rod down onto a wooden board and spinning the rod with the bow drill. Wood dust is generated from the two woods rubbing together and is heated by the friction, creating a small ember in the dust. Small tinder is then placed on the ember and is blown, igniting the tinder. So we have this strong pressing down, this burning fire, this intense pressing down in our bones, the place where life is produced from the blood, the protection, the support, the friction of trying to keep it in and knowing to speak what Yah has given us to speak. The bones we see over here on the right-hand side, 2569N is a bone. At the 2569, we see the action is abundant and the concrete is a bone and the abstract is abundance. The numerous bones of the body, the ones that provide support, the ones that provide protection, the ones where the blood cells are made, are the strength to the body. It comes from the two-letter parent root, because this is an adopted root of the ayin zad, as the bones are the tree of the body. And down there at the bottom we see the ayin zad. The concrete is a tree, the upright and firmness of the tree. The elders of the tribes were the upright and firm ones, making decisions and giving advice. The upright and firmness of the tree. So this fire was burning in Jeremiah's bones, just as it should burn in our bones. We need not hold it in. We actually should not be able to sustain it in there. We should not be able to hold it in there. Praise Yah. Looking at a foreshadow of the bride that comes from the body of Messiah. Genesis 2:21. So Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh in its place. And the rib which Yahweh Elohim had taken from the man he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And the man said, This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman, because she was taken out of man. For this cause a man shall leave his father and his mother, and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So this woman, this wife, this one that is to be the bride, shall be pulled from the body of Messiah. Right here it says, bone of my bones. In the spiritual sense, the life being in the blood, and the blood cells being created inside the bones, inside the bone marrow. Everything from the L to the Taw that contains the DNA that's contained in the blood that flows through the body that gives life, that which was in Messiah should also be in us. It should burn like a fire, because his word burns like a fire. What was in him, the L to the Taw, should be what our desire is, and the life of blood that is made inside the bones that flow through our body. Hallelujah. Looking at the next word in the bride line, we see it as Strong's H3605, kol, from 3634, properly the whole, hence all, any, or every. In the ancient Hebrew lexicon, it's 1242 JN. The N is all. Again, the J is action is sustain. The concrete is food. This is the exact same three Hebrew letters that we saw in the previous word we just saw, which was sustain. Same two-letter root, Kaf Lamed, Kaf Lam, tame for the oak. In the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, all. Everyone or the whole number of particulars. So all doesn't always mean all. We also see that this word, the frequency, is 120 times used throughout the King James Version of the scriptures. So we're just going to look at a couple because that would be a lot to go through. So continuing on, let's take a look at this word all and how it pertains to what we're seeing in the bride line. Sticking with Jeremiah 2, let's look at verse 21. Again, speaking of Yisrael, yet I had planted you a choice vine, all of it a true seed. How then have you turned before me into the degenerate plant of a strange vine? We see in the King James with the Strong's numbers, we have a noble vine, whole or all, right seed. So this noble vine that Yah had planted, Strong's H8321 from H8319, in the sense of redness, a vine stock, properly one yielding purple grapes, the richest variety. Those who were to rule with El were supposed to be the richest variety of purple grapes. We see it in the ancient Hebrew lexicon. It's a choice vine. Really, that's pretty much all the information we get. It's an adopted root again, is the fact that it is a choice vine. So this noble choice vine that was planted is to be wholly, all, fully, completely, and I would say this time all does mean all, a truth seed, a right seed. So we see this right or truth seed, something we've covered, I think even in this series before, is 1290 CN2 in the ancient Hebrew lexicon. It's ament. What is firm? The action is firm, the concrete is pillar. Something that grabs hold or supports something else. The passing of strength or skill to the next generation. A large group of the same kind are stronger than one. The action is firm, the concrete is kind, the abstract is sure. The mem is the water, such as liquid, such as blood. The noon is a seed representing continuance. Combine these mean blood continues. Each species, or kind, continues by passing its blood to the following generation, which comes from the parent. Also the idea of strength through the blood. So we see here that this seed, this likeness, this blood should continue. This noble vine was planted wholly a right seed, and that's what should have continued from generation to generation. Looking at the seed, we see that it is a zahra. It's a seed. To sow is the verb in that root line. The action is to sow, the concrete is seed. The sowing of seeds by scattering them across the field. So this seed that should be scattered should be a truth seed. It should be everything in order from the El to the Ta. So this noble choice vine, this richest of purple grapes, that was to be holy, a truth seed. How then art thou turned, to turn something over, as if pouring out its contents, into the degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me? The degenerate vine, something that is turned away. The action at the child root is to rule, one who turns the head of the people through power or legislation. The sin is a thorn representing turning, the resh is a head, turn the head, the turning of a head to another direction. One who rules turns the people to his direction, the turning of the head of the child or student into a particular direction. So we see that this degenerate vine has turned away, has turned its head. We see it as a plant of a strange vine. The strange is actually foreign, comes from an action of to know. And this degenerate plant of a strange vine, this vine is different. It's not the noble vine that have the richest purple grapes. It's actually a grapevine. The vines of the grapevine are twisted and bent as it winds around the pole. So it has become a strange, foreign vine, one that does not know him, one that has turned away. Since Yisrael blew it, now we see the true vine. Not that he wasn't always the true vine, but we were supposed to be a true vine, producing the richest purple grapes. John 15, I am the true vine, the truth vine. My Father is the gardener. Every branch in me that bears no fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, so that it bears more fruit. We only bear it by being a truth vine. We only do that by producing the richest purple grapes. We should have done it then. We should be doing it now in Him. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Stay in me, and I in you. As a branch is unable to bear fruit of itself, unless it stays in the vine, the true vine, the truth vine, because He is the truth, so neither you, unless you stay in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who stays in me and I in him, he bears much fruit, because without me you are able to do naught. If anyone does not stay in me, he is thrown away as a branch and dries up, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you stay in me, and my words, which are the truth, which is the truth seed, because the word is the seed, and the seed is the truth, and Yeshua is the truth, and Yeshua is the word. Yahweh came to rescue us is His word. He is the truth. We need to see that it is staying in us, that you shall ask whatever you wish, and it shall be done for you. In this my Father is esteemed, that you bear much fruit, rich, choice fruit, and you shall be my taught ones. So whose word of truth should this be that is in us? Jeremiah 23:36. But the message of Yahweh you no longer remember, for every man's message is his own word. For you have changed the words of the living Elohim, Yahweh of hosts, our Elohim. We're either this choice, noble vine producing rich fruit, Yisrael, that will rule with El. We're speaking His word, we're speaking His truth, we're speaking the seed that He's planted, or we're speaking our own words. Let's take a look at another place this word all, or whole, is used. Proverbs 16 verse 2. All the ways of a man are clean in his own eyes, but Yahweh weighs the spirits. So again we see our word all, our whole. All the ways of man, the entire direct of a man are clean in his own eyes. Direct is a road that is walked as well as the path of life. We see that it comes from the resh het. It is an adopted root. I would have to question whether there should be a kaf or a het in this word. Derech comes from the resh het as a path, which is the same place where we get our word ruach, or path. So all these roads of a man, all the ways that he is walking, the first time we see this word used is actually back in Genesis, where it is the way, the direct to the tree of life. So all the ways of man are clean in his own eyes. This clean is 1149 AN, pure, an oil or other substance that is free of impurities. Also a person without impurities. The action is refined, the abstract is pure. An oil or other substance that is clear and free of impurities. So we see this, all the ways of man are clean, are pure, refined in his own eyes. He is pure in his own eyes. He is without impurities in his own eyes. These eyes is actually an eye, it's an ion. It's where we get our actual word for ion. The eye reveals the heart of the person at the parent root. Combine these mean at the two-letter parent root, I of continuance. So in our own eyes, the eye reveals the heart of the person. So all this ways, the road that's being walked, this path, is refined and pure in the eyes that reveal the heart of this man. So his heart is pure in his own eyes in the road that he is walking. But Yahweh weighs the spirits. Ruach, wind, also the wind of man, or Mighty One, the breath. So we see again, this is the path, this is the way that's traveled. At the 2-letter family parent root, we see that it is the Resh Het. Action is to travel, the concrete is path. The Resh is the head of man. The Het is a wall that separates the inside from the outside. Combined, these mean man outside. The responsibilities of the nomad outside of the tent include feeding, watering, and caring for the livestock. Livestock are healthier and more productive when on a routine. Therefore, the man follows a routine or a prescribed path each day when caring for his livestock. So we see Yahweh is going to weigh the way in which we walk. So let's take a look at this Proverbs 16, verses 1 through 9. This is the Amplified Version, as taken out of the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon. To man belongs the preparations, as to arrange things in order, of the heart, the seed inside, the one which we will feed. But from Yahweh is the answer of the tongue. All the ways, the road which we choose to travel is determined by what seed we feed, of a man are clean, without impurities, in his own eyes, because he is watching over them according to what he thinks, feeds, wants to believe, and that which he is feeding. But Yahweh weighs, measures against what he has spoken to us, the spirits, which path we are following, and how it measures up to his path, as the one laid out back to the tree of life. Commit your works to what he has revealed and is goading you in. Commit your works to Yahweh, and your plans, your designed course of action, shall be established. It shall be firm. Yahweh has made, spoken, breathed, the way in which there will be an experiencing of his staff, all for his purpose, and also the wrong, the ones who have left the correct path, for the day of evil, the day of dysfunction. Everyone proud in heart, as their own authority inside, and as such truly feeding the other seed, is an abomination, is disgusting to Yahweh. Hand to hand, he goes not unpunished. By loving commitment, kindness, mercy, and truth, crookedness, the result of twisted actions, is pardoned. Covering a debt or wrong, atonement lid on the ark. It's the same word. And in the fear of Yahweh one turns away, turns and secures themselves back to the right head, from evil, from dysfunction. When a man's ways, road, which we choose to travel, is determined by what seed we feed, please, one's will and desires are written on these potsherds as a message to another. When a man's ways please Yahweh, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Better, functional, is a little with righteousness. One who is upright or righteous is one who walks a straight path, than a large income without right ruling. A man's heart, authority inside, and as such makes evident which seed we are feeding, plans, designs course of action, his way, the road which he chooses to travel, determining by which seed he's feeding. But Yahweh establishes, makes firm his steps, his pace, his marching orders. So we see as a bride, we should be doing good and not evil to our husband all the days of our lives, by the way that we walk, by the seed that we're feeding in our lives. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Know him in all your ways, and he makes all your paths straight. Whose way? His way. It's the only way. A few additional verses to consider. Exodus 19:5. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. walk in his way, to be a peculiar treasure. Psalms 18 verse 30. His way, is perfect. The word of Yahweh is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust him. The devil leads all the world astray? No. Even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. It is impossible to deceive the elect because they are warriors of Elohim. Those who are making and being made ready for the first resurrection and elected for the bride are not deceived. The next word we'll be looking at in the bride line is the word able. It's at 1242, LV. The V is able. At the L root, the action is able and the concrete is vessel. One who is whole or complete is able to do or perform something. Again, it's the Kaf Lam, two-letter parent root, tame for the yoke. In the 1828 Webster's, we see that able is having physical power sufficient, having competent power or strength, bodily or mental, as a man able to perform military service. A child is not able to reason on abstract subjects. Wow. Also in the 1828, we see this word perform, as we saw at the L child root, one who is able to do or perform something. Perform, to do, to execute, to accomplish. As to perform 2 days' labor in 1 day, to perform a noble deed or achievement. Number 2, to execute, to discharge, as to perform a duty or office. Number 3, to fulfill, as to perform a covenant, promise, or contract, to perform a vow. Perform, verb intransitive, to do, to act a part. The player performs well in different characters. The musician performs well on the organ. So we see this performing is something that one is able to do, whether it be to fulfill, to perform a covenant, a promise, or a contract, to perform vows that one has made, to do or act the part. We should be not just acting, but performing our vows as one who is looking ever forward to be married to our King. So one able to enter in is one able to perform the work, to keep the vows. But what about being unable to enter in? Hebrews 3, verses 7 through 19. Therefore, as the Ruach HaKodesh says, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion, in the day of trial in the wilderness, where your fathers tried me, proved me, and saw my works for 40 years. Therefore I was grieved with that generation and said, they always go astray in their heart, and they have not known my ways. They complained, they grumbled, they fornicated at the foot of the mount, straw that broke the camel's back for 40 years, not believing that they could enter in and take the land, because due to the giants. As I swore in my wrath, if they shall enter my rest. Look out, brothers, lest there be any of you a wicked heart of unbelief in falling away from the living Elohim. But encourage one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened by the deceivableness of sin. For we have become partakers of Messiah, co-heirs, joined to him, Chaber. I think it's Haber. Of Messiah, if we hold fast to the beginning of our trust, firm to the end. Don't let go. Not today, not tomorrow, because tomorrow will be another today. While it is said, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. For who, having heard, rebelled? Was it not all who came out of Mitzrayim, led by Moshe? They saw all the miraculous signs and wonders of Yah bringing them their deliverance, and rebelled. And with whom was he grieved 40 years? Was it not those who sinned, whose corpses fell in the wilderness? – 'After they said, no, we don't believe. And to whom did he swear that they would not enter into his rest? But to those who did not obey. So we see that they were unable, not able to perform the work because they did not have the belief. We see this verse in Hebrews was actually quoted from Psalm 95, verses 7 through 11. But let's start at verse 1. Come, let us sing to Yahweh. Let us raise a shout to the rock of our deliverance. Let us come before his face with thanksgiving. Let us raise a shout to him in song. For Yahweh is a great El, and a great sovereign above all mighty ones, in whose hands are the depths of the earth. The mountain peaks are his also. His is the sea, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. It's all his. It was made by him, through him, and for him. He's in it all. Come, let us bow down and bend low. Let us kneel before Yahweh our Maker, for he is our Elohim, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you would hear his voice, because we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand, do not harden your hearts as in the provocation, as in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tried me, have proved me, though they saw my work. For 40 years I was grieved with that generation and said, they are a people who go astray in their hearts, and they do not know my ways. As we saw previously, we needed to be walking in his ways. Verse 11, as I swore in my wrath, if they enter into my rest. Because of their continual rebellion, their continual provocation, their continual giving in to temptation in the wilderness, from the golden calf to the complaining to the grumbling, all the way up until the time they said, oh, we can't cross over into the land. The giants are too big. We do not believe that Yah can do this thing. They made themselves ineligible and unable to enter into the land, such as it will be come the first resurrection. They were in Exodus at the foot of the mount, ready for the marriage covenant, and then to go into the land. So today will go into the land and then enter into the marriage covenant. We need to be able to enter into his rest, into that land, into the pasture, because we are the sheep of his hand. So we are told not to harden our heart, as in the day of provocation, as the day of temptation was in the wilderness. We're in the wilderness now. We need to stop striving and allow the testing. This provocation, Strong's H4808, Mirba, quarrel, Ancient Hebrew Lexicon 1439 MK1, strife. At the child root, the action strive, the abstract strife, the responsibility of the master is to strive for survival and protection of the house. Whose house? His house. At the two-letter parent root, the action is rule, the concrete is master, the abstract is increase. The resh is the head, the bait is the tent, representing the family. Combined, these mean head of the family. Each family has a master that rules all cases, trials, conflicts, and contests. This person was the representative for the whole tribe, one abundant in authority and wisdom. So they were striving, this provocation, instead of striving for the things that Yahweh had showed them, the straw that broke the camel's back, striving to enter into the land, to take over the giants, to enter into the land, they were striving for their own survival. Looking in the 1828, we see strife is exertion or contention for superiority, contest of emulation, either by intellectual or physical efforts. Strife may be carried on between students or between mechanics. So we see there was a contention over who was superior, who was telling the truth. Were the giants superior, or was Yah superior? We see this Testing, this temptations in the wilderness, is a testing of men, judicial, or of Elohim. It's at 1314a, A1 in the ancient Hebrew lexicon. It's a trial. It comes from the A, child root, where the concrete is a standard. The action is lift, the concrete is standard, the abstract is refuge. The pictograph nun is a picture of a seed representing continuance. The sin is a picture of a thorn representing the idea of grabbing hold. Combined, these mean continue to grab hold. The tribal flag that is hung from a horizontal pole and lifted up high is seen from a distance. We see that the letters in the word are the mem, the nun, the sin, and the hey. So these trials were given to them to see if they would allow themselves to be cleansed by the seed, the word, that would allow them to grab hold of everything that Yah was revealing to them. They flunked. Today we have that same opportunity, that as these trials and these testings come, we can allow them to take place and for us to be cleansed. In the 1828, we see testing is a trying for proof, proving by a standard or by experiment. The operation of refining large quantities of gold or silver by means of lead in the vessel called a test. So this vessel, we are his vessels, as we saw in this, actually in the bride line. We are being tested and tried like a metal to see if the impurities will be taken out, to see if we will stand under the banner, under the flag that is Yah. In this process, extraneous matter is vitrified, scarified, or destroyed, and the metal left pure. This operation is performed in the manner of copulation. So we see here that we need to stop striving for our own house and allow the testing and striving to enter into the land, actually through the door in that day, into the millennial reign. So they were unable to enter his rest. Are we going to be able to enter his rest? Strong's 4496. Repose or adverbally peacefully. Figuratively, consolation. Specifically, matrimony. Hence, concretely, an abode. Are we going to abide with him peacefully in his abode and be taken to be his bride in matrimony? Ancient Hebrew Lexicon 1307 JK1. Rest. At the child root, the action is rest, the concrete is rest, a place of quiet and rest from burdens, work, or the enemy. Praise Yah. At the two-letter parent root, we see the nun and the het. The action is to guide, the concrete is rest. The pictograph nun is a picture of a seed representing continuance. The het is a picture of a wall that separates the inside from the outside. Combined, these mean continue outside. The shepherd would guide his flock to a place of water, the sheep of his hand. Here the water for drinking, as well as green grass for pasturing, the sheep of his pasture, the water of life. Once the flock arrives, they are free to rest after the long journey, and a long journey it has been, a guided journey to a place of rest, a place of pasture for the sheep of his hand, a sigh of rest. We will enter into his rest. We will enter into the cleansing that allows us to continue an eternal life and be secured to the right side of the fence at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah, because we followed him to this place of pasture. We are certainly able. Numbers 13 verses 30 through 33. And Caleb silenced the people before Moshe and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are certainly able to perform, to overcome it." Able, certainly, perform. And they gave the children of Israel an evil report of the land which they had spied out, saying, The land through which we have gone as spies is a land eating up its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw in it are men of great size. And we saw there the Nephilim, sons of Anak, of the Nephilim. And we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes. In our own eyes. So we were in their eyes. And so we see again Caleb and Joshua along with him, Yehoshua, saying, we are able to perform. We are able to overcome. We see that this, let us go up at once, a primitive root to ascend, intransitively be high, our active mount, used in a great variety in senses, primarily and secondary, literally and figuratively. We see that it is at 1357 HV, to rise, to go, come, or bring oneself up to something. Allah. It comes from experiencing the staff. We are able to rise up at once and go in and take possession if we walk in his ways, if we follow his word, if we have the belief, if we do not strive for our own house, but allow the testing and believe what he has said, we are certainly able to enter in and overcome these giants and take possession of the land. Possession, yarash, a primitive root, to occupy, the driving out of previous tenants and possessing in their place, by implication to seize, to rob, to inherit, also to expel, to impoverish, to ruin. We see it at 1458 LV. Inherit, yarash. At the child root, action is to inherit. The abstract is inheritance. The inheritor becomes the head of the family. At the two-letter root, we see the action to inherit. The concrete is head. The resh is a picture of the head. The head of a tribe, chief, or family, father, is passed from generation to generation. The head grants permission for betrothal of his daughters and determines the inheritor of the tribe or family, the head of a person, place, thing, or time. These two spies said, let's go up at once and take possession of it. It was the word of Yah. They were to inherit the land. They were to go forth with permission of the head, Yah himself, to enter in and take possession of the land, to inherit it. But they did not believe, because the other spies, the other men that had went up with them, said, we are not able. We are not able to perform what Yah says that we can perform, to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. Really? Looking at not, we've already seen able, and it's to perform. They were not able to perform. Ancient Hebrew Lexicon 1254, JN. Not. To or if, to have what you are without. Two-letter family root, lam el. Abstract is without. To be without anything, such as nothing. Apparently an opposite of el lam, which is el. It was the opposite of what El had wanted for them. It was the opposite of what El was telling them they were able to do. In the 1828, the word not, a word that expresses negation, denial, or refusal. They negated what Yah had said, they denied what Yah had said, and they refused to do it. With the substantive verb in the following phrase, it denies being or denotes extinction of existence. That in itself just speaks volumes. Like existence didn't know what existed. We see the word again, able. 1242, and I have the wrong letters. It's actually LV is able. The L, the action is able. The concrete is vessel. One who is whole or complete is able to do or perform something. Comes from the Kaf lam again, tame for the oak. They were able, according to Yah, to do this thing, to cross into the land, to take the giants. Abel in the 1828, again, having physical power that was sufficient, having competent power or strength, bodily or mentally, a man able to perform military service. A child is not able to reason on abstract subjects. Yah was sending them into the land. He said they were able to overcome. Yet they believed the report of the men that said they were not able. Listen to Yah. So whose report did they believe? Whose report should we believe? And they gave the children of Israel an evil report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land eating up its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw there in it are men of great size. This evil report is H 1681. It's a slander, speaking evil of another, usually done quietly. The concrete is slow, something that is done slow and quiet. The two-letter parent root, dalit bait. The action is rest. The pictograph dal is a picture of a tent door. The bait is a representation of a tent. Combined, these mean the door of the tent. The door of the tent was a place of relaxation for the father. Here he would watch his family, livestock, and the road for approaching visitors. See Genesis 18:1. This root is related to the beit dalit, a reversal of the letters. So this word is actually, they brought an evil report. They brought a slander. To defame, to injure by maliciously uttering a false report respecting one. A false report. To tarnish or impair the reputation of one by false tales, maliciously told or propagated. These are false, malicious, and propagated. They brought this slander actually against Yah himself, because he was the one that told the two spies they were able to overcome. We have the dal, the bait, and the hay. The spies who gave this report told the people that this door to the land of milk and honey was not for the families, the house of Israel, because they saw they looked completely different to them than that of what Caleb and Yehoshua saw. Their revelation was right, because of the strength of the enemy was greater than Elohim who was within them. Wrong. Their revelation was wrong. The revelation that was given to Yehoshua and Caleb was that they could enter the door into the land, the families in the house of Israel, because it didn't matter what they saw, and it didn't matter what it looked like. Yah was able to do this thing. They just needed to believe and not have unbelief. So the people did what? Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel grumbled against Moshe and against Aaron, and all the congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Mitzrayim, or if only we had died in the wilderness, because that would have been a better place than the land of milk and honey. Doesn't make any sense. And why is Yahweh bringing us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should become prey? Would it not be better for us to turn back to Mitzrayim? And they said to each other, let us appoint a leader, and let us turn back to Mitzrayim. They wanted to turn back, be pressed back to the house of Mitzrayim. Then Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Yehoshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their garments. And they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good, functional land. If Yahweh has delighted in us, then he shall bring us into the land and give it to us, a land which is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yahweh, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their defense has turned away from them, and Yahweh is with us. Do not fear them. But all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Okay, so let's kill the ones that tell us that they've spied out the lands, we can take down the giants, and let's kill them? Then the esteem of Yahweh appeared in the tent of appointment before all the children of Israel. And Yahweh said to Moshe, How long shall I be scorned by this people? How long, in their unbelief, shall it be a scorning to Yah? And how long shall I not be trusted by them, with all the signs which I have done in their midst? How long shall I not be believed by them? They saw all the signs. Let me strike them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. So he was going to start over with Moshe, making a nation greater and mightier than they. He was going to start over with the Malki line. Looking back at Numbers 14, 11, and 12, and Yahweh said to Moshe, How long shall I be scorned by these people? And how long shall I not be trusted? How long shall I not be believed? How long shall I put up with their unbelief from them, with all the signs which I have done in their midst? Let me strike them with pestilence and disinherit them, and make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. So here we see we have our not, which is H3808. And I believe we've looked at that just up in the beginning of this video. It's the opposite of L. And then we have our belief, not belief. The belief opposite of L. We can see there that it's firm, to stand firm, as a support in the ancient Hebrew lexicon. At the two-letter root, the action is firm, the concrete is kind, the abstract is sure. The mem is water or liquid, such as blood. The noon is a picture of a seed representing continuance. Combine these mean blood or likeness continues. So what they believed in was not carrying on the likeness of El, the belief of El himself. And we also saw that he was going to continue on with Moshe, disinherit the rest, and continue on with Moshe of the Malki line. That's Strong's H6099. He was going to make him mightier, powerful, specifically a paw, by implication numerous. We see that it is AHLB 2569D. It's the same root where we got the bones, where the fire was burning in the bones of Jeremiah. The place where the blood is made and life is in the blood. He was going to make him a mighty, numerous nation with everything that would have continued on from the El to the Ta. And as a true man of Yah, what does Moshe do? Moshe intercedes for the people. And Moshe said to Yahweh, When the Mitzrites shall hear it, for by your power you brought these people up from their midst, and they shall say to the inhabitants of this land, They have heard that you, Yahweh, are in the midst of these people, and you, Yahweh, are seen eye to eye, and that your cloud stands above them, and you go before them in the column of cloud by day, and the column of fire by night. Now if you shall kill these people as one man, then the nation which have heard of your report shall speak, saying, Because Yahweh was not able, of course he's able, to bring these people to the land which he swore to give them, therefore he slew them in the wilderness. It had nothing to do with Yah's ability, no matter what the people around them said, no matter what happened. It had to do with the people. Verse 17, And now I pray, let the power of Yahweh be great, as you have spoken, saying, Yahweh is patient and of great loving commitment, forgiving crookedness and transgression, but by no means leaving unpunished, visiting the crookedness of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth. Please forgive the crookedness of this people, according to the greatness of your loving commitment, as you have forgiven this people, from Mitzrayim even until now. Moshe, the man of Yah, stood and interceded for the people, and left the rest in Yah's hands. So here we see at verse 19, from Mitzrayim even until now. Until when? Until a determinate period of time. The time has not ended that he will forgive the crookedness of this people according to the greatness of his loving commitment, even until now. At the two-letter root, the action is repeat, the abstract is witness. The pictograph ion is the eye, the dalit is the door, see the door as a coming to attentive meeting and entering in, a place, time, or event that is repeated again and sometimes again until those that see the door and are striving to enter into it enter in. The first resurrection, and then there'll be another chance even until the second resurrection. This word now, until now, is 1106 HN in the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon. It's here. At the H, the concrete is here to draw attention to a place or event. See the door, here and now, see it, strive to enter it. The action is look, the abstract is here. The hay represents the idea of looking towards something of interest. The noon is a seed representing continuation. Combined, these pictures mean a looking towards something continually. So even until the time in the future where we see the door as we're striving to enter into it, we continue to look towards it, and eventually we're in the presence of the revelation of Yeshua, Messiah. There's still time. There's time to repent. There's time for forgiveness, even until then, until even now. But there will be a time when it comes to an end, because Elohim promises judgment. And Yahweh said, I shall forgive according to your word. But truly as I live, and all the earth is filled with the esteem of Yahweh, for none of these men who have seen my esteem and the signs which I did in Mitzrayim and in the wilderness, and have tried me now these 10 times, and have disobeyed my voice, shall see the land of which I swore to their fathers, nor any of those who scorned me see it. The time is now. The time before Elohim comes in final judgment. 1 Peter 4, verses 12 to 19. Beloved ones, do not be surprised at the fiery trial that is coming upon you, to try you, as though some unusual matter has befallen you. But as you share Messiah's sufferings, rejoice, in order that you might rejoice exultingly at the revelation of his esteem. So don't be surprised when these things come to try you, no matter what it looks like, no matter how big the giant. The goal is to cross over into the land and be there and rejoice exultingly at the revelation of his esteem, the revelation of when he comes at the first resurrection, and be there at the revelation of his esteem when he marries the bride. If you are reproached for the name of Messiah, or because you're carrying his message, you are blessed, because the spirit of esteem and of Elohim rests upon you. On their part he is blasphemed, but on your part he is praised. For do not let any of you suffer as a murderer, or thief, or doer of evil, or as a meddler. But if one suffers being a messianist, let him not be ashamed, but let him esteem Elohim in this matter. Don't worry what they say. As long as you're carrying the message, as long as you're giving others the report of Yah and not an evil report, because it is time for judgment to begin from the house of Elohim, because Elohim promises judgment, and it's going to begin with his house. And if firstly from us, what is the end of those who do not obey the good news of Elohim? I'm going to go with definitely not going into the land. And if the righteous one is scarcely saved, where shall the wicked and the sinner appear? So then, those who suffer according to the desire of Elohim should commit their lives to a trustworthy Creator in doing good. There will be times when the suffering will be much worse than what Joshua and Caleb experienced. Don't be surprised, even when it comes upon you. So, and let's remember this. Opposition will come. We've got a grand example in Nehemiah. And it came to be when Sanballat, that's an interesting word study, heard, that's actually sin vivified, heard that we were rebuilding the wall, that he was wroth and highly offended and mocked the Yehudim. Don't be rebuilding that wall, because I guarantee you, you're going to have someone wroth and highly offended that is against the rebuilding of the wall of the city, and they will mock you. And he spoke before his brothers in the army of the Shomeron and said, What are these feeble Yehudim doing? Are they going to restore, slaughter, complete it in a day? Are they going to bring to life the stones from the heaps of rubbish which are burned? And Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, Whatever they build, if a fox should climb on it, he shall break down their stone wall. How? Hear, O Elohim, for we have become despised, and turn back their reproach on their own heads, and give them as a prey in the land of captivity. And do not cover their crookedness, and do not let their sin be blotted out from before you, for they have provoked you before the builders. So we built the wall, and the entire wall was joined together up to half of it, for the people had a heart to work. Do we have the heart to work on the wall and be joined together? And it came to be when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were being repaired and the broken places began to be filled, that they became very wroth. That is so. And all of them conspired to come to fight against Jerusalem and to do it harm. But we prayed to our Elohim and set a watch against them day and night because of them. And Yehuda said, The strength of the burden bearers is weakening, and there is so much rubbish that we are unable to build the wall. And our adversaries said, Let them not know or see it until we come into their midst and shall kill them and cause the work to cease. Yep. Don't let them know. Don't let them see. We'll sneak on in there and we'll kill them. And it came to be, when the Yehudim who dwelt near them came, that they said to us 10 times, From whatever place you turn, they are against us. So I set men behind the lower parts of the wall at the openings. I set the people according to their clans, with their swords, their spears, and their bows. And I looked and rose up and said to the nobles, and to the deputy rulers, and to the rest of the people, Do not be afraid of them. Remember the great and awesome Yahweh, and fight for your brothers, your sons and your daughters, your wives, and your houses. Do not be afraid of them. Fight for your brothers. Be a strong wall for those that are a strong wall for you. And we carry on. Nehemiah 4:15. And it came to be, when our enemies heard that it was known to us, and that Elohim had brought their counsel to naught, and that all of us return to the wall, everyone to his work. Everyone should be working and restoring this wall, or guarding those that are working to restore the wall, the living stones in the wall to be joined together. We need to believe the report of Yah and not the report of the enemy. And it came to be from that time on that half of my servants were working in the work, while the other half were holding the spears, the shields, and the bows, and the breastplates. And the rulers were behind all the house of Yehuda, who were building the wall, and those bearing the burdens, those loading, working, with one hand in the work, and with the other holding a weapon. As for the builders, each one had his sword girded at his side as he built. And the one who sounded with the shofar was beside me. What an amazing picture! And I said to the nobles, and to the deputy rulers, and to the rest of the people, the work is great and large, and we are separated far from one another on the wall. Kind of like we're separated today. Kind of like the harvest is great and the laborers are few. In whatever place you hear the voice of the shofar, join us there. Our Elohim fights for us. So we labored in the work, and half of them held the spears from the break of day until the stars appeared. At that time I also said to the people, let each man and his servant spend the night in Yerushalayim, and they shall be our guard by night, and for the work by day. So neither I, nor my brothers, nor my servants, nor the men of the guard who followed me, none of us took off our garments, each one his weapon, even at the water. And so we carry on today. We believe the report of Yah. We fight for each other. We build the wall, the living stones together. We come against the giants in any way, shape, or form that they take. And that leads us and those who would come along right back to Revelation 19, verses 6 through 8. And I heard as the voice of a great crowd, as the sound of many waters, and as the sound of the mighty thunder, saying, Hallelujah! For Yahweh El Shaddai reigns. Let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife has prepared herself. The living stones have prepared themselves. And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright, for the fine linen is the righteousnesses of the set apart ones. Praise Yah. There will be those living stones who have made it and cleansed themselves and prepared themselves as the bride. And then there will be others who made that choice coming into the second resurrection. Our goal now is to be in that first resurrection and to bring others with us, to join together and be as one, as a strong wall for each other, for our brothers, for our sisters, doing everything for and unto Yah in the righteous ways that he set out before us. Hallelujah.